So Brad Heinrichs is the president and CEO of the Iowa Swarm Collective. The Swarm has been in the news a lot lately, of course, about how competitive it is in the NIL space with basketball. And, of course, now with Ben McCollum, the new head coach at the University of Iowa, there's going to be a lot of expectations for the Swarm Collective to help, pay players. And Brad joins us now on the Rush Radio Show, powered by Willis Automotive. Brad, it's been an interesting week in Hawkeye athletics, that's for sure. And now you got to come up with a lot of money, don't you? Don't you have to come up with a lot of money?
Yeah, I'm under the heat lamp, guys.
It's good to see you, Brad. Good to see you. All right, so can you tell us, and you've always been an open book with us, when did you get involved, or what has your involvement been up to this point in this hiring process since Fran McCaffrey? Maybe even go back, did you get a phone call before Fran left?
Well, I'm in touch with people in athletics quite a bit, whether it's coaches, staff, or Beth Getz directly. I mean, Beth and I have a pretty good relationship. I think she would tell you that we have a free-flowing communication. So it's not as if it's, I need to call her assistant to get on the calendar for a 15-minute call. It's not like that at all. We text each other, call.
Glad to hear that as a Hawkeye fan.
So I do have kind of free-form communication with Beth, and we had a discussion at the beginning of the process and talked a little bit about kind of where we are with everything. And she took it from there. I wasn't involved in any interviews, contrary to what people might think. She asked me for my opinions on things, but I wasn't involved with. I wasn't in the war room, if you will, casting a vote one way or the other. That was not my role, and I found out that he was our coach, that Ben was the coach, maybe a bit before everybody else, but not, I didn't. I think he actually Monday morning, I think, is when he actually signed the agreement. So I think the rest of the world found out not too far after it was official. So I wasn't like I said, super as involved as many people might have necessarily thought.
Okay, but did somebody have to make a phone call and go, hey, Brad, how much money do we have? Because let's be honest, the Swarm has taken kind of a beating since Darren DeVries took the Indiana job because of Twitter saying they just don't have the NIL money. Somebody had to call you and say, how much money do we have to work with, didn't they?
Yes, and we have those conversations. The interesting thing about it is that some of it's speculative. It's how much money do you have? And then there's how much money are we going to raise if we have Coach A or Coach B or Coach C as our head coach. And then there's also the question of how much to do with what we have had to do with the prior head coach, right?
Yeah,
and
yes, absolutely.
So you can't say, well, the Swarm raises this many millions of dollars a year for basketball, and so therefore that's what we're going to have going forward, because that's a kind of an apples and oranges argument, right? I mean, the new coach, no matter who it is, probably is going to generate some excitement that a coach who's been there for more than a decade is going to. I mean, I think that there's some, I think there's just some natural enthusiasm and excitement that comes with something brand new, right? Not to say that Coach McCollum isn't deserving of excitement on his own right. His resume is incredible. Dude, he doesn't just win everywhere he goes. He almost wins national championships and sets records wherever he goes. So we got one hell of a coach, and I'm real excited to see how this all plays out. Whether it's from a fundraising standpoint or just on the court. I mean, both are going to be exciting to see, and I've already seen a little bit of a bump, if you will, in momentum, support, and enthusiasm for Hawkeye hoops as it pertains to the Swarm bank account.
Has Ben McCollum called you yet to say, hey, what do I need to do to help you raise money?
That's a call that's gonna be happening in the next 24 hours. I've been assured. He's got my number. I think he's a busy guy right now.
True.
He's had a long day, and then tomorrow is the press conference. I would imagine I'll hear from him tomorrow, if not Wednesday. So yeah, I and Beth told me that he would be contacting me soon. It's just a matter of on his schedule when that time makes most sense. I think he's also trying to figure out whether some of his guys are coming along or whether some of the Iowa players are going to stay or whether they're going no matter what. So I think I'm, even though I like to think I'm important, I think I'm pretty low on his priority list right now. He needs to have players on the floor more than he needs to talk to me.
You think you're important, Brad. I was screaming yesterday on the show that you should have been in those interviews. You said you weren't involved with the interviews. I really do believe, not necessarily in the room, and I think I said that yesterday on the show. Like, this guy Heinrich should be sitting there with you talking about the cash for you. But
and I would have done that. I offered to do that. But people have different styles.
Yeah.
I'm going to give Beth the benefit of the doubt. There are some people that like to do things in groups. Some people like to do things solo, or in a very, very small group. It's not for me to judge. And to be fair, I think she got who she wanted the whole time. And so, what's to criticize? I think she's fired up. I'm fired up. Everybody's excited in Hawkeye Nation.
So give us an idea of what the basketball payroll was last year and what it's projected to be in 25 and 26.
That's a fair question, and the truth is I don't know the answer. We have estimations, right? And what you should understand is that I think it's a couple of weeks. I think it's April 7th or April 8th. I think it's the 7th. The House settlement case will either be approved, or it will be rejected or approved in some other kind of form. I'm not sure, but that will determine what the rules are moving forward. The proposed House settlement, as you know, kind of basically says, hey, there's a designated $20+ million amount that each school can use towards paying student athletes, right? And at Iowa, we've got 22 sports. I think it's going to be the revenue-producing sports that are going to get the majority of that. It's not my decision, but that's what I think Beth is going to do. And I don't think that it takes an astute sports journalist like yourselves to know that football is going to get fed first, right? They're going to get what they need to be competitive. And one of the things that I think is interesting is that I think Iowa has got a unique situation relative to other schools in that we're pretty invested in wrestling, right? There's probably one other school that I would say is invested as much as we are in wrestling. That's Penn State, right? And we're also invested in women's basketball. Had a lot of success lately, for sure, although today was disappointing a bit, the way that the season ended. But they had a good season, really exciting, and Carver was sold out for a majority, if not all, of the women's games. Then you have, of course, men's basketball, which is most schools either number one or number two. And I'm not here to necessarily rank those. I think football would be one for sure. But after that, kind of depending upon which fan we're talking about, a different sport might be two or three. And so I think we're going to be we may be trying to feed more sports than a typical school might, right? And so our calculus might be a little different than others. With that said, I would anticipate, to get to the question that I think the answer to the question I think you're trying to get to is, I would anticipate $4 to $5 million
for basketball.
For basketball
would be my guess. Now, that's a guess. Again, I am being completely speculative here, and that number can change up or down depending upon a lot of things.
So what was it last year, though? What was it last year?
It was over $1 million. I don't have the exact number in front
Yeah,
of me.
but you go from a 1 to 4 to 5. That's a huge jump and gives you a lot more flexibility to go get some players.
It does. It does. Although, our last game of the season was against Illinois, and I think their budget was around 7.5. So, I mean, I'm watching that game. I'm watching that game through a different lens than everybody else. I'm watching that going, we're trying to beat these guys with one arm tied behind our backs a little bit. They've got a payroll that's substantially higher than ours, and I'm feeling guilty about it, to be honest with you. I'm like, damn, this sucks, and I feel bad for Fran, and I feel bad for everybody. As a Hawkeye fan,
a lot of people would wonder, why was that? Why then did this? There are some misconceptions out there, and maybe you can address some of them, because you rattled through a couple things. I was like, wait a minute. One of those is that basketball had zero NIL, and that there was zero support from the Swarm towards the NIL. That the Swarm has essentially been football centric. Can you tell us why that perception exists, and how far off is that from accurate?
I think that it is fair to say that there are a lot of the big Hawkeye donors. I say big, the ones with the high net worth Hawkeye donors. It's kind of hard to say that phrase. A majority of those, when I've asked them about supporting Swarm, and of course they get to pick where the money goes. Like, this isn't people. I've been accused, well, you only care about football. No, I care about supporting Iowa athletics and for all of them to be successful. But it's not for me to tell somebody where their money goes. And if they want to write the check for football and not basketball, that's not something I can complain about. I'm thanking them up up one side and down the other. And by the way, football, we weren't the richest football program out there either. I mean, Ohio State, I think it's pretty well documented, they're spending over $20 million on the football team. From a revenue share standpoint next year, that's the whole thing, right?
True.
And so, we've just come to a point in time where college athletics and college athletes are less excited about how nice the locker room looks and how, and the facilities.
Yeah.
They're excited about opportunities on the floor and in their bank account. And by the way, that's no different than you or I or anybody else, right?
That's fair.
Right.
That's
fair.
Okay. Right.
Best opportunity in my job and for my financial livelihood. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that is going to become a different paradigm.
Yeah.
Different equation than what we've had before. And that's fine. I think the programs and the fan bases that embrace that, view that as a challenge, that understand that even if they've got all they have is $20 a month or whatever they've got, that's helpful and that's supportive. If we had 10,000 Hawkeye fans giving us $20 a month, we're going to be doing a lot better instead of 3,000. That's really what the ball game is now. It's just different, and some fans are excited about that. Some fans are not. But to get back to your original question about men's basketball, I don't think that it's really a stretch to say that a lot of fans, for one reason or the other, you guys can list all the reasons.
Likable coach.
Whatever those reasons are, you can list them. That they stop being supportive. And you look at those major revenue sports that I mentioned. Football sold out. Women's basketball sold out. Wrestling sold out. Men's basketball, a third full. Okay. I mean, I don't think Beth had a difficult decision, and I don't think Fran was necessarily terminated. This is a personal opinion. This is not coming from her. So to be clear about that. But me as a Hawkeye fan felt like she had that decision she had to make.
Yeah.
That was as much financial as it was about a record. I mean, he's the winningest basketball coach of all time in Iowa basketball history, right?
Oh yeah.
And so you have to make those kinds of decisions, and the fans voted with their feet, and they also voted against giving money to the Swarm,
and with their pocketbook.
Yes, they did. They absolutely did. And so it's exciting for me to see what's going to happen in the future. It's exciting to me, to see a rejuvenation of men's basketball. I went to Iowa, and I was one of those students that didn't miss us. My entire week was planned around, Iowa basketball games during the week and which bar had the best drink special. I mean, that was it, right?
You're a college kid at the time. Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, Brad, I'm trying to remember because you were more Chris Street era, not Roy Marble era, right?
I was.
Okay.
I'm 50.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was there in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
It was Chris Street was there when I was a freshman is when he passed away.
Yeah.
So one of those kind of moments where you remember where you were and what you were doing and what time of day it was and all that. So
you moved past another thing that we've heard. I want to just have you correct something or just give us the information that we should know.
Sure.
Because we've heard over and over that wrestling actually has their own NIL. They're doing their own thing. So is again partially true, kind of true?
I mean, it's partially true. I shouldn't say it's partially true. Of course, they have the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. It's true. They have the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. Does that mean that if you gave to Swarm and says, "Hey, I want it to go to wrestling," would we make sure that it got to wrestling? Absolutely.
Okay.
We're trying to help the Hawks succeed. So if someone wants to give to us, tax deduction and all that, and some of it go to wrestling, some of it go to basketball, some will go to football, whatever they have, they want to break it down, and it's just easier to send it to us. Fine, we'll make sure that the wrestlers get Swarm money as well. This is not we haven't abolished the wrestlers from the Swarm. There's none of that at all. They've had a long standing support group that has mainly been for graduate wrestlers to help them get to the Olympics and that kind of thing. But I think that they've kind of migrated towards the to the active college athletes as well, and so it just makes sense that they're the most involved.
So you can't tell us whether or not Bo Bassett got $5 million.
I cannot tell you if Bo Bassett got $5 million. And I will tell you that I haven't even asked the question. He's not. So put it this way, he's not getting $5 million from me. I can assure you. I'm not. Worth it, but
listen. If you're going to hand out checks like that, I will wrestle my ass off.
Yeah,
go like a dog.
We want to be respectful of your time. We know you got a dinner date to go to, but we do want to ask you, is it getting harder or is it getting easier? We ask you this every time you're on, but is it getting harder or is it getting, because you're on Twitter the other night going, hey, send money. We need to get a basketball coach. And that's the last place you want to go is Twitter, because you're like, God, you just think people would pick it up. But is it getting harder or easier?
It's harder right now because we don't know what the rules are. Right, we don't know what the rules are going to be, right? And when we've been sort of in limbo with coaches, that's difficult. Yeah, and I also think with social media, man, it's. I mean, I've been called a lot of words that it's been since I was in high school before I was picked on this much,
And you're not even a nerd. You're not even a nerd.
Oh, come on. I'm an actuary. You kidding me?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
You kidding me? I mean, yeah. And with red hair, I mean, the redheaded stepchild jokes, I've dealt with those for decades. But
Brad,
it's hard. It's not getting easier. I can assure you of that. It's not getting easier. And you know what? I'll tell you why. Because price inflation has happened substantially in this game. When I say substantially, I mean like exponentially. And so you have the coaches saying, oh my gosh, I've got to pay this amount for a quarterback or this amount for a starting, guard and or whatever the case may be. And then they look at me and say, can we afford it? And I start to sweat because you don't, it's not like I'm sitting on an endowment here, right?
Yeah.
So I'm having to ask myself, can I raise this money? Right? Because I will not, what's the word? Welch on a bet. I will, when I put a contract together, that person's going to get paid through the swarm. I don't tell people, I don't back out of anything. In fact, if necessary, if we're running low on cash flow at the time, I'll write the check. Okay. It's when I would say a high percentage of collectives have promised things and didn't deliver.
So they're borderline Ponzi schemes?
I won't say that they're Ponzi schemes, but I just know that there's a lot of collectives. I hear it from the student athletes where their buddy at such and such school was told he was going to get this, and they told him, no, sorry, we're not getting that, or you're not getting anything.
I think in a court of law, this would fall into bait and switch, Travis. But you're sniffing around the right tree there.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, it's definitely not getting easier. And like I said, the price of poker, the price of success, has escalated to numbers that are actually kind of mind-boggling to me. I'm not sure that $5 million sounds like a lot. Okay. But I'm not going to come on here, since I don't have any knowledge. I'm not going to come on here and say it's impossible. I'll tell you that. I'm not going to say it's impossible because I've seen people get paid stuff that I'm like, whoa.
Before I know we want to let you go, but is it a bubble that will burst, Brad? Do you think that we ride a wave and eventually it's like, okay, we don't have to pay a starting quarterback, $11 million?
Well, I think this year for sure is if you think about the stock market, where you hit kind of a peak and then you're going to drop down for a little bit. I think that there's some of that. So there's going to be a correction in the market. Here's why I think that is that I think that you have the collectives. Some of the collectives are just emptying their bank account, anything they have stored up, and they're basically saying we're going to pay everything we've got in our collective because we may end up going away after the revenue sharing comes up. And so you have the revenue sharing promise, and then you have the collectives basically just dumping their bank accounts out. And so I think that has caused a lot of inflation. Again, that's speculative. I don't know what all the collectives are necessarily doing or how they're thinking, but that's been my theory as to why the prices have gone up. But we'll see, right? There may come a time when it's just disadvantageous to go pro.
That's true. Very, very true. All right, Brad, we appreciate your time. You're as honest as always, and a lot of insight right there. And you never know when you hire a head coach. I've heard people say it's a transformational hire. I think it's the right hire, but the truth is you never know with a head coach until like 3 years down the road, right? I mean,
you really don't. And I do know though that everybody I've talked to is super excited about this guy.
Yeah.
And I also know that our athletic director got who she wanted. So you've said that
twice
exciting.
now. I wanted to get back to that, but I know you're getting ready to get out of here. Someday we're going to.
We'll do it again sometime soon.
Right,
How about
Brad.
that?
All right.
Thanks,
man. All right, Brad. Thank you so much. We'll catch up soon.